1096.
Okay, House Bill 1096 for consideration and recognizes Representative Murphy to explain his bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm pleased to present to you House Bill 1096. Madam Chair, I have a committee substitute for this bill.
Okay. Hold on a second.
Sure. We've been working for quite a time with our stakeholders trying to make sure we've got all this laid out correctly.
Okay, so the chair lays out House Bill 1096 for consideration and recognizes Representative Goldman. I'm sorry. Representative Goldman offers committee substitute to House Bill 1096 and calls on Representative Murphy to explain the measure. Pardon me.
Oh, well done, Madam Chair. Okay, so talking about the substitute, about this bill. So this substitute includes some new language, which is exemptions for judges, law enforcement officers, and victims of family abuse who are currently protected from the law from having their address listed. This bill is about residency. The substitute also has a couple changes that I want to bring to your attention. It prevents the usage of a commercial driver's license for residency, since current law mandates that a CDL does not display your residence address. It also clarifies the process to challenge residency. And finally, the substitute sends the voter affidavit. This is something that lacks all the forms of ID. They send the affidavit now to the county registrar instead of the Secretary of State, and this is a change that was added by the Secretary of State's election division, or requested, I should say. The intent of this bill, 1096, is simply to ensure that voters will reside and vote in the same precinct. Today, and members, you've probably encountered this, some voters are registered at vacant lots, mailbox stores, motels, and commercial locations. This situation is a problem for voters, candidates, and the public at large. This bill will allow a voter registrar to match a person's residence address with 6 options with an opt-out and several exemptions. So here are the items that they can use to match in order. Texas driver's license, the personal identification card, the one issued by the DPS, the concealed handgun license, where a person receives mail, excluding P.O. boxes if they don't correspond to a residence. There are P.O. boxes that correspond to residents in some rural areas, as you may know. A homestead address, or the registration address of a vehicle a person owns. If a voter is unable to provide any of these forms, they can simply file an affidavit with the county registrar. We've had conversations with people representing the homeless, for instance, who fall into this deal. In addition to the exemption for those addresses that are protected, this bill makes an exception for full-time students and active military members to ensure their right to vote is preserved. This law will provide a direct relationship between a residence on a voter registration and documentation to verify residence, and this is the only time you can use this verification, if a challenge occurs in an election requiring verification of a voter's residence, or if there's a conflict or discrepancy found. A voter will not be required to have any form of documentation I just described in order to register to vote. This bill provides for the Secretary of State's office to adopt rules as necessary to implement this section. And Madam Chair, I have a few witnesses to speak on this issue and be happy to return to close.
Okay, and you have certain witnesses you'd like to go first?
Yes, ma'am. I think it'd be easier, and there may be others who signed up as well.
Okay.
But if the committee has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those if y'all have any.
Do y'all have any questions for Representative Murphy?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now the chair calls Ed Johnson to testify. I'm sorry, let's see.
Yes, right. Or am I in the wrong order?
Are you Ed Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't recognize. I was thinking somebody else was Ed.
Okay.
Okay, so have you registered?
Yes, I have. Am I on the list?
I'm looking for Mr. Johnson.
Did you register with the outside form?
I did. I went on my little iPad and filled it all out.
You filled it all out? Okay, so,
I can re-register again if you
yeah,
want.
this is the first full hearing, so work with us, folks.
We might want to re-register.
Do you want me to do my testimony? and
Okay,
register?
we'll go ahead and let you do the testimony, but make sure you can.
Okay. I'll
You
go back
asked to
and
register
re-register.
first?
All right.
All right, let's call the next witness, and then, okay. In that case, then the chair calls Cheryl Johnson. Have you registered with the clerk?
Yes, I have.
Do we have her on the list?
Yes,
Okay, so for the record, please state your name, who you represent, which bill you wish to testify for or against your position.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl E. Johnson. I am the Galveston County Tax Assessor Collector and Voter Registrar, as well as a voter of the state of Texas. And I'm qualified to speak on the importance of passage of 1096 due to my capacity as a registered voter and the voter registrar.
Okay, and you said you were for the bill?
I am for the bill.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Although the word residence occurs in Texas statute 563 times, is extremely vague in the Texas Election Code, resulting in 79 years of lawsuits in order to define it. The Texas Education Code defines resident as a person's home or other dwelling place, and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board has not only written a great deal of administrative code to define it, they created a residence determination official for every Texas higher education institution. But Secretary of State does not have anything that elaborates like that does. And the county appraisal districts require a Texas ID or driver's license to establish a homestead exemption with the same address as the property. And I gave you application president homestead exemption so you could see this requirement. And at the bottom of the first page, you'll see it. I put that at each desk. And then on page 3, the required documents are a copy of a driver's license or Texas ID. Everyone is confident of the DPS standard, which is specified in administrative code, and it even requires a residency affidavit, which I have also presented here. And if a person lacks any 2 items listed on the back, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to read all these, but I want you to understand, with passage of Representative Murphy's bill, including a Texas driver's license or Texas ID, all of these other items are included. So a current deed, mortgage statement, a residential lease agreement, a valid unexpired voter registration card, a motor vehicle registration or title, boat registration, concealed handgun license, a water bill, a cable bill, a phone bill. Everybody has a cell phone bill. That's included in this list. Electric service card, a homeowner's or renter's insurance policy, any high school diploma or transcript, or college, a W-2, a 1099, anything from a bank showing that you have a loan. All the things listed here, by virtue of him including just those 2 items, includes all of these items too that would enable somebody to register to vote. And I think it's really important you understand it's not the 6 things that are listed in his bill. It's like 18 things that are also listed here, because this will get you a Texas driver's license. Everyone is I'm sorry, let me go on. You cannot get in Texas a driver's license, attend college, or have a homestead exemption without proving where you live. So I believe that voting is just, if not more important than those things, and I hope that the time has finally come for the legislature to truly identify and settle this question and get it out of the courtrooms. House Bill 1096 would really clarify a lot for us in the voter registration offices. It'll also stop us from having to be put in the middle of political battles where people are questioning whether we're smart enough to register voters with the address they put on their application. I thank you.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, Chair recognizes Jacqueline Kallen. If I said that wrong, please correct me. It's kind of like Lovenberg. And I do want to make a statement that if you notice that they are still reading and referring bills on the House floor, that we do have permission to conduct the committee. That was given earlier today at 2:45, I believe. So we are covered. That's why we can start a committee meeting now. Okay, so with that, for the record, please again state your name, who you represent, whether you're for or against the bill,
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
and the bill you're testifying on.
Yes, please. I'm Jackie Kallen, the Bexar County Elections Administrator, and also the Legislative Chair for the Texas Association of Elections Administrators, which are 103 counties strong. We are in support of this bill with the understanding with the substitute, and also we would like to work to have a little bit of more of the language defined. But we commend Representative Murphy on trying to help us with residency, because it is one of the biggest things that we deal with. And this has so many fine points where we can nail it down. It's very, very difficult for us with post office boxes, commercial addresses, that this will help us tremendously. And I don't want to belabor the point because Ms. Cheryl did a great job on the other part.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, members? Okay, thank you very much. All right, Chair recognizes Bill Fairbrother.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Fairbrother. I'm the Williamson County Republican Party Chairman, and I'm also Legislative Director for the Texas Republican County Chairmen's Association. And I'll be much briefer on the additional bills, but I want to take a brief moment to introduce Carl Tepper. He's the Chairman of the Texas Republican County Chairmen's Associations. He's here with us today.
Okay, great. And you need to say which bill you're testifying on?
This is Bill 1096,
And your position.
I support the bill.
Okay.
When I first became chair about 17 years ago, they said residency was a state of mind, and that can create several problems. The problems on registering have already been gone over. I just want to relay a couple of quick stories I've encountered as chairman and engaged in politics. We once had a bar owner dissatisfied with the Round Rock City Council and their discussion on a smoking ban. He lived down near Lake Travis. He decided to register at his bar as his residence so he could run for Round Rock City Council and right the wrong they felt the city council was doing. The one time I was sued as party chair was over a candidate dissatisfied over one of his opponent's supposed residence. This person had claimed the bedroom in her brother's house as her residence, even though she owned a property about 2 blocks outside of the district as it ended up being drawn. And those kind of cases can be avoided if we get the residency right at the stage of registration. Those problems can be fixed. And one key point is to remember is you can still put on, when you register to vote, a mailing address. So putting your real residence address still allows you to receive mail at a P.O. box or the place of your choice. Thank you all.
Members, any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the chair calls Alan Vera to testify. And again,
Is there a
Mr.
time
Vera?
limit?
Not yet.
Okay. Gotcha. Don't let Schofield talk. My name's Alan Vera. I'm a native Hispanic Texan, a Vietnam vet, and today I'm chairman of the Ballot Security Committee for Harris County Republican Party. I'm here to testify in favor of HB 1096. I've been deeply involved in election integrity efforts all across the country for 5 years. And as a native and lifelong Texan, it really bothers me that the election code of the tiny podunk state of Maine has more clear language defining residency than does the election code of my home state, the great state of Texas. This section of our election code is now so ambiguous and so open to subjective interpretation, all it's created is lawsuits and constant intervention by the Secretary of State and the Texas Attorney General. First point clearly, leaving the language alone as it is not an option. It doesn't work. It really is broken. The case of Mills versus Bartlett made Texas a laughingstock nationally because of the ambiguity of this section of our election code and the way people tore it apart. Another charming piece of litigation related to this is an out-of-court consent decree that forbids the voter registrar of the largest county in Texas from initiating a challenge to any voter registration on the basis of residence, no matter how obvious the apparent violation or discrepancy. Are you kidding me, Alan? No, I'm not. The voter registrar for the largest county in Texas is forbidden from challenging voter registrations. The language in HB 1096 provides specific objective criteria in a ranked order of priority with which to better determine whether a prospective voter actually lives at the address listed on the voter registration application. It fixes the problems with the current language. And I will tell you, quite frankly, from years of reviewing voter registrations and challenging some, the problem is not with the homeless. The problem is with the homeful. It's people who have multiple residences and intermingle them strategically to their political advantage. Compared to all the other states in the Union, Texas is the A-team in so many factors: economic development and job creation. With regard to a clear definition of the correct residential address for voter registration, we're not the A-team. We are F-troop. And I'm tired of being F-troop. I ask you to join me in working to change the language of the proposal, of the of the code. Please move HB 1096 forward. I'm ready to answer any questions you have.
Okay, members, any questions? Representative Schofield.
Hey, Alan, I actually don't have any questions. I was thinking of a way to give you a hard time when you're up
I knew
there,
you
but
were.
You always out-debate me, so I'm not
I
going to
knew
do
you
it.
were.
But thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vera, thanks for coming today. Just a question. So you're in charge of the Harris County Republican Party ballot security?
That's correct.
Can you kind of tell us what that means?
That means I get to have a job that's like being the only air traffic controller in the tower at LaGuardia at 5 p.m. on a Friday. The Ballot Security Committee of the Harris County Republican Party tries to ensure the integrity of the election process all the way from voter registration through the actual counting of the ballots. The ballot board that works with the county clerk to actually count and certify the elections also comes under my jurisdiction. So every aspect of the election is under our, I guess, surveillance, if you will, and we do everything we can to intervene when necessary to make the right corrections. The biggest challenge of what we do is we recruit, train, and appoint people to work the elections. And in Harris County, with over 900 precincts, every November, that's a heck of a job.
So if someone is registered to vote and you know they don't live at a particular address, what's the process you take in order to enforce that?
Well, it depends on the person. Okay, we can't enforce. In Texas, a private voter, a registered voter, can challenge another voter. Okay, and in Harris County, the voter registrar can't challenge anybody. The proper thing to do is to do investigation. There's enough good evidence available publicly, and you'll hear about it from some other witnesses later, to look at, gee, he's registered to vote at this address. Oh my goodness, there are 7 other adults registered to vote at that address. Oh gosh, they all have homestead exemptions at different places from this one. All right? Based on that, an element that Representative Murphy's trying to address, we go ahead and challenge if we think there's reason to believe this person is not telling the truth about where he actually lives. It's further enhanced, sir, by the fact that his wife lives at and is registered at the homestead exemption address and not the address where this person claims to live. No lie, it's not unusual to find 7 adults registered at an address which is truly a vacant lot, while they have homestead exemptions elsewhere, because the current election code says where you intend to live after some absence. We've got to fix it.
And where do you take that challenge? You take it to the Harris County Elections Administrator, or you take it to the
We don't have
Secretary
an
of State?
administrator, we have a county registrar, voter registrar.
But you take it to them, or does it come to the Secretary of State?
Right now it comes to the voter registrar, and it has to be a signed affidavit notarized.
Okay.
It's a serious issue. It's a very serious issue.
That's what. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to,
Representative Fallon.
thank you for coming and testifying. Just a quick question, if you could enlighten us on just an anecdote or two or a story about the problems you have with people with multiple addresses and how they maybe manipulated the current system.
Yeah. You'll hear in a minute, and again, this is nonpartisan least part, you'll hear in a minute about a Republican candidate for a local office who is exactly what I just described. He had a registration to vote at an address inside the city limits of Houston with 6 other adults, and it was an 1,100 square foot house with 1 bathroom. Okay? He had a homestead exemption at a house in Spring, Texas, much farther to the north, where his car was registered, where his handgun was registered, where his wife lived and voted from. Okay? That person ran for office claiming he lived inside the city limits of Houston, being eligible for that, to run for that office. That's a problem. That's a problem. And it happens in big cities more often than not. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Schofield.
One serious question. You mentioned people with multiple residences. I know there are folks that live in our county who will have like a weekend home down in Galveston, and they decide on some local issue they want to vote down there to preserve their property or whatever, even though they live and sometimes vote in Harris County. Is your understanding this bill is designed to take care of issues like that?
This bill is designed to establish a clear definition of residence for purposes of voter registration, and it will take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you all so much for your
Thank
courtesy
you.
and time. Appreciate it.
All right, Chair calls up Colleen Vera. I get that right. And again, please state your name, who you represent, the bill you're testifying on and your position.
Okay, thank you. My name is Colleen Vera, and I'm here today representing myself in favor of House Bill 1096, and I think he just ruined my story.
And
I
you
researched...
are in your position on the bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in favor of
Okay,
House
you
Bill
may have said it, I didn't hear it.
1096.
Okay, go ahead.
I researched voter registrations in Texas as a member of a voter integrity group, and I've used that experience since to research political candidates. I found the majority of irregularities are from voters with multiple addresses or who have multiple addresses on their IDs, like their driver's license and things like that. I'd like to share with you one example of a voter registration irregularity that I discovered in 2012 involving a primary candidate where I live in Harris County. His application to be on the Republican Party primary ballot, his campaign financial statements, his donations to a Republican Women's Club, his homestead tax exemption, and his wife's voter registration were all addresses in the 5,000 square foot house in Spring. However, his voter registration was in an 1,100 square foot house outside the city limits of Houston, along with 5 other adult voters. Interestingly, 2 years later, in 2014, the address given for his political donations was still the address in Spring. He was still registered to vote in that same house in Houston. Yet there's now a new voter registered in that house in Houston whose homestead exemption is in Galena Park. This is not an isolated case. The problems addressed in House Bill 1096 are real, and House Bill 1096 helps to fix them. Requiring that the residency address for voting matches the residency address claimed on any other government document, to me, is a no-brainer. It's just asking to match something instead of it being the only thing out there. Please advance House Bill 1096. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Thank you. Oh, Representative Schofield.
Mrs. Vera, are you telling us that your husband stole your story?
Yes, he did. Probably because he's heard it a few times.
Is he going to hear about this on the car on the way home?
Yes, he will. Okay, thank you.
Can't have that one. Okay, no other questions. All right, thank y'all very much. All right, Chair calls up Carol Kitson.
I've already provided some handouts for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, come to the mic. First, introduce yourself.
My name is Cheryl Kitson, and I'm testifying for myself in favor of HB 1096. I have already provided a number of handouts. This weekend, I watched the archive video of the testimony during the committee's hearing of a very similar bill that was held in last session. The bill was attacked for allegedly not considering voter registrations by the homeless, the rural communities, and the impoverished citizens of Texas. Based on my experience reviewing voter registrations for a volunteer citizen election integrity group, the homeless, the rural, and the impoverished citizens with no proper residential street address are not really creating the majority of the issues with voter registration. The voters who are creating most problems are voters with multiple residential addresses. They're registered to vote at one address, but their car is registered at a different address, which is usually the same address for which they've requested and received a homestead tax exemption. Some others here may also address that issue as a separate, well, they did. Not only are the homeless, rural, and impoverished not focus of HB 1096, but Texas counties are bending over backward to accommodate the circumstances. Here's an example of the Harris, we've got one of these, of Harris County voter registration form. If you'll note, the box 3, the applicant is asked to fill in their street address and apartment number. The box then instructs, if none, describe where you live. So if it's under a bridge at Smith and I-10, that works. Box number 4 asks for a mailing address because the county voter registrar and county clerks need some way to communicate with a voter on occasion, and certainly to send out a registration card. Now, in contrast, I hold up the Texas, here's the Texas Secretary of State that you can find online. And it does not have, the boxes are not numbered, and the Texas Secretary of State's online application does not allow for the same residential location description allowed by the counties, and I suspect that they can fix that. But it is the multiple address of voters that are the problem with our current registration system, not the homeless, rural, or impoverished voters. And these latter are being accommodated by the counties to the highest degree. I've also included 2 news articles for which voters were charged with voter fraud for registering is living at one address when they, other than where their actual residence, and they did so in order to be able to vote for a specific candidate or in a district, a utility district in which there was an entrance coming. And of course, interestingly enough, both of them did involve political candidates. So I'm asking you to please vote to clarify the language so that we have a clear-cut view of and can make the voter registrar's jobs easier and also make sure that our elections, our integrity is held up. Thank you very much. And please vote it out of the committee and pass it on.
Okay. Members, any questions? Representative Schofield.
Carol, you alluded to the two articles that you provided us. The one is a Montgomery County rural road utility district, and it looks like 10 people listed their voter registration as a hotel in the district so they could take over the board.
You know what? That's exactly the case. I mean, it's ridiculous when people will go to that extreme. Basically, those extremes to try to manipulate the political system. And the thing is, that hurts everyone in the county.
So under the current law, they're able to live in a house. We all know where they live. We play soccer with our kids play soccer with their kids. They can go register at a hotel for the purpose of voting in this election, where probably 12 people voted, take over the board, and now they're in charge of the bonds. They're in charge of potentially millions of dollars of spending.
Exactly. That's why it's not. It seems some might consider it a small problem, but as you can, from that example, you can see what a huge problem it can actually create.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Members, any other? Thank you very
Thank you
much. All right, Chair recognizes Glenn Maxie. Is he? There you are. And state.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Glenn Maxie, and I am with the Texas Democratic Party, and I've registered in opposition to this bill because that's the only box.
And Mr. Maxie, can you, former Representative Maxie, can you state the bill number, please?
House Bill 1096, Committee Substitute.
And tell me again, I didn't hear you, just for me, who you're representing.
The Texas Democratic Party.
Okay, got it.
I'm going to preference my comments telling a story from last session. Last session, I only owned bright blue, Democratic blue shirts. Last session, the committee voted that I had to wear purple only, and that's why I have purple today, because I typically come here and talk in a bipartisan kind of way to improve election law. We can agree, the Texas Democratic Party, with the intent of everybody who's talked about this bill, that we need to shore up residency. The abuses that have been talked about are legend. We've heard them for a long time. I will tell my story of an abuse in East Texas. There is a RV park called the Escapees. They have 10 concrete pads. There are over 10,000 people registered to vote on those concrete pads, and not a single one of those RVs sits there today. It's a business where people from all over the country who are in RVs come to that county. They register their RV and get their lower registration fees in their home states, and they register to vote, establishing a residency so they do not have to pay income taxes in their home states. 10,000 people, 10 concrete pads. So yes, residency in Texas is a problem. Representative Schofield, for over the 40 years that I've been working up here, we watch every municipal utility district bill that passes. It creates a new board, and what happens? There's somebody living in a metal building in the middle of that blank field so that they can vote to pass tens of millions of dollars of bonds to build sewer systems and water systems. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and we should fix that. Our only problem today is sort of looking at this bill in the reality of the hierarchical kind of thing that's here. Clearly, we need to stop people from registering to vote at post office boxes and commercial mailbox companies. That's a problem. So all of those kinds of things we support. What we want to work with the representative on as we go forward is I particularly read this and about a whole handful of other election officials that are here today. Before the hearing we were talking about this in the hierarchical kind of thing that a new voter is filling out a voter registration card and they must put their driver's license address on it. That causes a little bit of a voter registration problem, and this is why I say that. Driver's license lasts 6 years. I will ask people in several legislative offices yesterday or Friday and today, all of the staffers that are up here, are you registered to vote at the same address as your driver's license? Almost none of these 20-somethings are. Their driver's license is still at their parents' address. They still believe that that's their address for their driver's license. They're here working at the legislature, but they registered to vote perhaps in Austin, to vote in the last election because they were here during the election season. So if you say hierarchically that you've got to use your driver's license as the first thing to register, and your driver's license is not updated, you know, here's always the thing. Well, they should update their address. But in Austin, 60% of the people in this city are renters. They, on average, move once per year. They move once per year, the majority of people in this city. So, if you say that you've got to use your driver's license, and it's right before an election when in Travis County, some 20,000 people registered in the weeks before the deadline, and everybody's asked to use their driver's license address, nobody's going to have an updated driver's license. And so the people are going to register to vote at addresses where they're not residing. So we create another sort of problem. Now, as I talked to some of the proponents today, they said, well, we're not reading this as hierarchical, that you can have any of these. If it was any of these, we're favored. We're all in favor. So it's just the hierarchical thing of trying to make people fit a driver's license or a concealed handgun before you go to their mailing address. That's our problem.
Members, any questions? Representative Schofield?
Well, Mr. Maxie, by law, people are required to update their driver's license within 30 days of moving, right?
90 days.
Was it 90?
It's 30.
I think it's 30. I think it's 30. But
I agree, but I understand that. But the issue is, will they have, when people are trying to register to vote, and will we get in a situation that lots of people will be disenfranchised because they figure out, oh, it's a day before the 30-day period to register, and my driver's license is not updated.
I read the bill as you do to be hierarchical, and I would presume it has to be that way to work. If you just said you can pick any one of these five, we're in no better shape than we are today. If we say the residence you get is the first one you qualify for, then we have a debate about which one it ought to be. And I have to be honest with you, I don't think I could go with where you get mail, which is probably the least. I mean, you can, all these guys could switch to get their mail at the hotel a lot easier than they're going to go get their driver's license and all that. I mean, wouldn't you think that's sort of the easiest one to fake if you're trying to do one of these things that we saw in the earlier examples to?
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying that trying to make people jump to several hoops at the very last period is going to cause a lot of people not to be able to jump through all of those hoops in the time period that they have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And we'll be glad to work with the author on trying to fix any of these tweaks. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, Chair recognizes Ed Johnson. Now he's registered.
Ed Johnson, I'm with the Harris County Clerk's Office, and here we're testifying for HB 1069.
Okay.
1096, you're good, 1096, close enough. And I have also worked in the...
And I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, you're testifying for... Okay, and you're representing...
the Harris County Clerk's Office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for the members. Also, I've worked in past in the voter registration office, so I've seen both sides of this issue. In fact, the first time that I was exposed to this was even before I was working for the county and helping a friend of mine, Dwayne Bohack, run, and he was walking his neighborhoods and going out with him and ran across a house that had 16 registered voters at it. And it ended up that it was his opponent's house. It was State Rep Kim Yarborough from years ago. But the really unknown secret that actually made the Houston Chronicle, had a neat little cartoon about it, is the old man in the shoe, was he actually had a garage behind his house that was the subunit that he had 5 more people registered at. And in saying that, it actually goes on both sides. I will tell you right now, currently, our county judge in Harris County has 14 people registered at his office. He doesn't know who they are, but they are all voting. So residency is an intent of mine. It's where you intend right now to register, and people are registering everywhere to vote. The one that I mentioned before with why it really hurts the county clerk's office with Ken Yarborough or Dwayne Bohack race is when you have close elections within litigation margins, we get into these big fights over residency. And what is that intent of mind of the voter, which cost our office tons of time and money. The Heflin-Bowe race, which some of y'all may remember here, went back. It was a very close race, very heavily conceded. Our office probably spent 6 months pulling documents of every voter registration card, every poll list, every signature, so that they could compare to see where people were registered and where they weren't, to try to have this intent. Cost our office, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Cost both candidates, I heard, close to the millions in litigation over residency. Cost State Rep Dwayne Bohack, when he sued Yarborough, hundreds of thousands of dollars over residency. It is a very tough issue when it is a state of mind of where you register. And what we like about this bill is that it puts some order to it, so hopefully a judge can sit down and go down a checklist and say, yes, no, you're in the district or you're not, so that we can get by with these ongoing lawsuits. Currently, there's a lawsuit in Harris County over the Harris County Community College. Harris County Houston Community College. A fellow by the name of Dave Wilson registered to vote at his place of business, won the election, and seated an incumbent for many years. I think he was the president of the board. And, the Harris County attorney has been trying to correct that wrong now for 3 or 4 appeals, which has cost tons of money from the taxpayers and tons of money on the candidate's side. We would hope that we could put some definition to this so we can stop the madness in our office, because when we get into these election contests, it takes us forever to settle them. It's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Any questions, members?
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, can you come back for a second? Okay, so now they show you as twice being registered.
Okay.
So I do not deal with the technology, so I only respond to what we need. So what I need you to do is to call your name again and make sure there's not another Ed Johnson. Is there another Ed Johnson out there?
Could be.
There's no other Ed Johnson to be confused with this Ed Johnson.
I have it on good authority, no one wants to be Ed Johnson.
Okay. Is that it?
That is all.
Okay, thank you. You are the only Ed Johnson.
As
But you
far as I
had
know in this
registered,
room.
you had registered, it did not look like you had registered,
No,
Right.
but now it caught up with you.
that's right. I'm
Not to be
reg-
confused with being registered to vote twice.
Twice. No, I'm not registered to vote
Only to
twice.
testify.
No, only in my residency,
Okay,
where I keep my driver's license updated.
thank you. Okay. Computers. Okay, so now Chair calls up Cheryl Swift.
She left.
She left. Okay, so Cheryl Swift Cheryl Swift is for the bill, 1096, and chooses not to testify. Okay?
We only have these two.
Okay, and they do not wish to testify. No other witnesses? Okay. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to testify for, against, or on the measure on 1096? All right.
And then you can.
And
I think I saw a hand.
did we see a hand? Okay. Why don't you just come up to the microphone, we'll get this cleared up. Did you register outside?
I registered just, yeah, out of one of the kiosks.
Okay, all right. For the record, go ahead and state your name.
My name is Janice Evans. I'm the Elections Director for Missouri County, Texas, and I'm here representing the County and District Clerks of Texas, the association.
Can she repeat her last name, please?
Okay, can you repeat your last name, please?
Janice Evans. I'm registered on 2 bills.
Did you register on 1096?
I did on 1096 and
Okay,
622.
no. We're just talking 1096 right now. Hold off.
And that's spelled.
I don't know.
EVANS.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We must have a few.
1288, so it must not have gone through on 1096. So
But you may,
Let's go ahead and get you registered for 1096.
just go back out if you might, don't mind.
Can you help her get that?
Would you like me to help?
Okay. All right, is there anyone else who technically has registered? Oh my, this is saying a lot about technology, isn't it? So, okay. All right, just bear with us. We're working out the kinks.
The 2-bill registration. It sounds like
The 2 bills, yeah, they try to register on 2 bills at one time. Tick-tock. No.
But they're only speak on one drill.
Is she coming? Okay.
Might want to play some internet.
Okay. Members, we do have Keith Ingram, Secretary of State, who is here on the bill for 1096. If y'all have any questions for the office? No questions? Oh, okay. Well, Keith, can you come up?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Keith Ingram, I'm with Secretary of State's Elections Division, and I am neutral on House Bill 1096.
Representative Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a few questions as I was looking over the bill. Will the residency requirements have to be met at the time of registration, or only if the registration is challenged?
The bill, as it's worded, doesn't. I mean, what it says is that when somebody registers to vote, they need to register it in this list order. So if you've got a driver's license, you need to register to vote at that address. Now, if somebody doesn't, there's no way for a voter registrar to check that on the front end. So, you know, if a voter doesn't follow that list and vote, registers to vote somewhere else, then the only way that would ever be brought up is if someone made a challenge, like Mr. Vera was talking about. And if a challenge is made to a voter's residency, the remedy for that is the voter registrar sends a confirmation notice to the voter and says, are you sure this is where you want to claim your residency? And if the voter affirms that is their address, that's the end of the hunt. The next step after that is to refer them to a district attorney for lying.
Okay. Now, if they have to prove their residency, where do they send the necessary documentation? Who do they send that documentation to?
When a confirmation notice is sent from the voter registrar will have a return address in there for the voter to respond to. So any proof of evidence of the residence will be sent back to the voter registrar.
Okay. The only other question I had is, what happens in the event that you have someone who is homeless or something like that? How would they prove their residency?
I don't know. The bill provides for an affidavit in that circumstance where the homeless person would describe a physical location, and I don't know how they would do that other than submitting another affidavit that would say the same thing.
Okay, so basically they would have to submit the affidavit.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Secretary of State's office? Okay. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
All right, and also John Oldman with the Texas Association of Election Administrators is here. If y'all have any questions, he's here to speak on the bill.
For this bill, did I not show up as being
You're come up to the microphone.
I think I did 4 or 5. Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Representative Reynolds represents part of my county, Fort Bend. Pleasure to be here. I am speaking today on...
State your name. You need to state your name.
John Oldham.
Yeah, who you represent, and
I am speaking on behalf of the Texas Association of Election Administrators, of which I'm the current president. And talking about House Bill 1096. And I've changed my mind on this bill. It's a good thing I'm testifying neutrally because I've changed my mind 3 or 4 times this morning in conversation with different people. But last week we sent this bill on Thursday afternoon to our membership and other persons in the election community. And we got back a common response. Well, it's wonderful that this bill addresses the issue of commercial mailboxes. That is, Keith and I were going back and forth on emails last week about this. It is a huge issue, and it is a proliferating issue. I drive by 7 commercial mailbox establishments between my home and my office each day, 14 if I go home. So this addresses that, and we commend the sponsor for doing so. We also had concerns, and one of the concerns that was universally expressed by those who voiced an opinion had to do with, would this be applied to Election Day voting in some form, shape, or fashion? We met with Senator Murphy's staff. They say no, it will only apply to issues of election contests. And we also tried to get an answer in terms of, is this hierarchical or isn't it hierarchical? And maybe that doesn't matter too much, but we would prefer it to be a little bit more concrete for this to say, they shall be in this order, not just have them out there. The other thing we would like to see is some affirmation as to what this is really, this deals with election contests perhaps, or this should not be language modified so that it cannot be interpreted as a address verification ID bill on Election Day. That would open up a nightmare for our poll workers. That this only, I know it's in the section on registration, but everybody who looked at this had the same question, and if everybody has the same concern and question, there may be an issue there where the language could be made more concrete. But otherwise, we certainly appreciate the concept. I'm a former Illinois election official. I've seen 3-room boarding houses with 45 people registered to vote there. So this is clearly goes in the right direction in order to establish, and most states are like us, that residency is a state of mind or matter of intent. So clearly this is a good thing. We would just like a little bit more clarity, or at least that's what my membership says.
Members, any questions? Okay, thank you very much. All right, now the chair calls up Janice Evans. We got it this time. Now, again, state your name, who you represent, what bill you're testifying on. Very important there, and your position.
My name is Janice Evans. I'm the Missouri County Elections Director. I work under County Clerk Joyce Hudman, and I'm here testifying for the County and District Clerks Association of Texas. John was the elections administrators. This is the other half of the people that hold the elections in Texas. The county clerks usually are the elections administrators. Originally, I signed up against it.
Right, now you're testifying on...
For House Bill 1096.
And your position, as you're testifying here today?
Today is going to be neutral.
Neutral, okay.
Okay. I'm like John, things have changed since we got here. Because we did the same thing. You send out an email, tell us what you think of this bill. Everybody said we were going to turn our election judges into address police. If the way this bill reads, that I understand it, they're ranked in order of priority. I did hear somebody else say that, and nobody contradicted it earlier. So, if you have a Texas driver's license, you should be registered at that address. Is that what you get from this bill? What we're worried about is the people show up to vote with the voter ID. You have a driver's license. It's not the same address that they're registered. We do not want our election people turned into address police. Now, he did say the amended bill says only in challenges, but our worry is we totally commend them for this bill. Please don't take it that we're against. We love what they're doing. But we're here to protect ourselves as the elections people for unintended consequences. Just like even the voter ID bill, we were all for it, but then there came some unintended consequences that led to a lot of bookwork and paperwork. So that's what we want. We think it needs to be revised to answer more questions so that people do not think that that's going to have to happen at the voting. We do not want it to happen at the voting locations.
Members, any other Representative Reynolds?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And I guess I should have asked John the same question. What revisions would you like to see to make it more succinct or for more clarity? What would you like to see specifically?
Well, when we see it, do you agree if you were working at an election place and you said, do you still live at this address and the address on your driver's license is different? We don't know what could happen later that it doesn't apply on election day voting. And I guess we need something to say it's only for purposes, and of course they did put the thing only for contested, but that's not what we had before we got here today. So I don't know if
is there some
clears it
additional
up.
language that you have in your mind or your association has that you'd like to see the bill drafter?
I'm not an attorney, so
Okay.
I really wouldn't. John might have a better idea. We just want to make sure we don't get these repercussions down the line that we have to turn our workers into address police.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, members? Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify for, against, or on House Bill 1096? Okay, with that, then Chair recognizes Chairman Murphy to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, thank you for your patience through all the technical issues. I want to thank my witnesses for registering and re-registering, as the case may be. We really appreciate your consideration of this, the questions y'all have. Clearly, there's an issue when you have a bill filed and then you provide a substitute that the folks haven't seen. We'll continue to work with people, make sure they understand the bill. As you heard, people were against the bill until they understood, oh, there's a substitute, and maybe that language has been addressed, but we'll meet back with those folks, make sure you get that information. You heard from people that are in charge of elections, you heard from people in charge of registering, activists saying, like you, they've had personal experience with the problems of the current system. And so we are trying to be hierarchical with this list. I think it's a fairly easy tweak to make. We've also been very specific about the language in the bill, what documents are there, and situations where it applies. In a challenge is when we're trying to do that. We've also been very specific about the exemptions. The military, people with protected identities, full-time students are all exempt. The notion of the driver's license, I want to kind of come back to that because that's really important. And Representative Schofield, you were talking about the law does currently hold that. You have to register your license within 30 days. That's Transportation Code 521054. I wanted to cite that, Representative Goldman, Vice Chair, because my staff worked so hard to find that site. And I do have good staff. And I want to point out, if you register to vote, you can't vote for 30 days. Coincidentally, that's the same 30-day period you should be updating your driver's license. And by the time you go to vote, bingo, if you're following the current laws, everything would match up. Our assumption is people are going to follow the laws. I recognize that doesn't always happen, but these are the laws we have. So you have plenty of time to have your documents in line on the day of voting. In fact, you're kind of supposed to. But we will continue to work with people to do that. Representative Reynolds, you asked about the homeless people. The homeless people and the rural voters, the impoverished, are one of the reasons you have the opt-out for the affidavit. You simply say, I live on 6th Street between Lavaca and Guadalupe. And we're good to go on that. That's a specific location that would actually fit the code. But all this to say, we want people to vote where they live and live where they vote, tie those two together in a reasonable way that keeps everybody voting. That's key, but also establishes integrity within our election process. So with that, I close, Madam Chair. I do want to ask for your favorable consideration, but I will not ask you to do that until we have a chance to circle back with some of these folks and make sure they either understand the substitute we've provided or that we've tweaked some language to make it something they can support, and we'll let you guys know that.
Okay.
So, happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Nothing else? Anything else?
Thank you for your patience.
All right, then the chair withdrawals substitute to House Bill 296, and then House Bill 296 will be left pending at this time.